All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Omni viewer, and it's the third live stream. Unlike last time, where it was just me sitting here and rambling and generally just making a fool of myself, this time I've got someone who will help me make an even bigger fool of myself. Our guest today is the YouTuber known as C Animus. Hello, please introduce yourself.
Hello.
Please introduce yourself. Let
Hello.
the people know who you are.
Well, my name is, as the preeminent Omni viewer has introduced, I am C Animus. I am a YouTuber who's been YouTubing for, oh, blimey, 3 years now. I started with criticisms of Godzilla versus Kong, moved into general sort of monsterverse videos. My most successful video to date is Godzilla King of the Monsters, a great joy. It has something like 50,000 views or something. So I like to pride myself as being very analytical and critical, but also nuanced. So you're never going to get a full video of me saying this thing is awful in every way, shape, or form. I will point out all the good things as well, and vice versa. So yes, I like to. That is my general overview of my content, and to be fair, a lot of it is inspired by the Omnivore himself.
Well, yeah, we've actually had a couple of delayed back and forth responses to each other at this point, where one of us makes a video, the other responds to it, and you know, it's been interesting. So I've been interested to see what happens if we finally have a chance to chat in real time. So,
Well, yes, me too. It's we've I don't know if it's spoilers for anybody who might be watching this, but we have discussed possible topics. The fact that we settled on let's go see what happens, I find very interesting. Although it must be said, it was very nice of Simon Pegg to say some very stupid things to give us something to talk about.
that's going to be one thing we'll probably look at today. First and foremost, let's see who has actually joined us, at least as far as in the chat goes. So Ethalokia was here waiting, saying, "Oh boy." Glad to know that Ethalokia is here. There's Sea Monster Essays. How's it going?
Yay, Sea Kings! Woo!
Yeah, you've been on several live streams with Sea Monster, I believe, right?
Yes, he invited me on to a couple. I've missed a couple, unfortunately, due to the time zone difference and various health problems of late. But yes, I've been on a couple of his streams talking about various topics, including Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, which I got a couple of cameos in one of his videos.
Oh yeah, that epic one. Oh, and
Interesting story
incidentally,
with.
yeah,
Oh
go
no,
ahead.
you go.
I was just going to
I was
say,
going to
glad to hear that your health issues are at least better, if not fully resolved. So,
Oh yeah, they're not going to be fully resolved for another. I think it's like 4 months.
mm,
That blood clot is going to be there a while. But
mm,
the thing I was going to say, interesting story with Sea Monster. I can't remember which exactly of his videos I watched first, but I think we really got talking to with each other when I made, what was it, part 3 or whatever it was of Fractured Diamond.
oh
And
yeah.
he left a comment in my video, which he then made a video of, and then I watched his video and added his contribution to my video, my full video.
Yeah, that was another interesting little back and forth. There's a lot of that going on in the kaiju tuber community. Anyway, let's see who else is here. Bad boy A Nang, ride or die. Hello to you.
Hello.
Bass Bruin, or is it Base Bruin? I guess it depends. 3 years. I'm started YouTube 3 months ago. Oh, good job.
Good luck.
Let's see. Enzaru says greetings and salutations, Omni viewer, C Animus, and everyone. Salutations to you as well.
Salutations. I like your thumbnail. Yeah, thumbnail.
Oh yeah, with the Mothra burning Godzilla combo. The Goji Shay 1991 reporting for duty, sirs. At ease. Minecraft World says hello. Hello to you.
Hello, I look forward to our debate.
Oh, there's a debate coming, huh? What's that going to be?
Don't know whether that's or whether I should be talking about that, or whether that's going to be something Zimzilla is going to be talking about. But yes, there will be a Godzilla King of the Monsters debate,
Interesting.
and I won't spoil any more details just in case. But yeah, that is going to be a thing.
Looking forward to that. The Terror of Death, greetings from the Forgotten Circle of Hell, also known as Florida. Oh.
I mean, that's where all the old people go. So
Hmm.
now here's a question: Terror of Death. Is that like death's terror, like you're afraid of death, or is that death's terror like death is afraid of him?
That is an interesting question. It's all in how you read it.
Terror of death, let us know.
And go Jillian91/Matt says hello there.
Hello.
All right, I think that's everyone who's commented at this point. Okay. So, do we want to you already kind of hinted at it. Do we want to start with the Simon Pegg thing? I know you did a video yourself on it, which if anyone here hasn't seen that yet, you should go check it out. But
We can do. I could start with a correction, which I noticed after uploading the video. A correction which actually makes Simon Pegg worse, which I find kind of funny. And I already kind of addressed it, which again the detail I addressed makes it worse as well.
Should we maybe inform people? Do we want to inform people what this is in case they missed it? Or
yes, good idea.
Just in case.
For anybody who has not been made aware, Simon Pegg made some comments about Godzilla -1. I'm trying to. My mouse is going all over the place. What's going on? Godzilla, nice one notes. Simon Pegg made some comments about Godzilla -1 being uploaded to Netflix. His initial comment is very positive. Where's the quote? It's incredible. It's a proper Godzilla movie made by the people who sired Godzilla from their subconsciousness as they wrestled with the massive ramifications of what happened during the Second World War. And then he says, it's not some rock'em sock'em effing cultural appropriation.
And that's
that
what
was the initial video. Then he actually made a second follow-up, which I didn't bother addressing because it was literally a dub v sub argument, where he's saying sub all the time, never listen to the dub. You have to listen to the original actors, which just brings up does he not think that like audio actors, like voice actors, are rubbish? Does every like Pixar film just sound horrible to him? I don't, there's some questions there. But the proper follow-up video is the one that got me, because he had this whole analogy about someone making a song. And this is where I got my detail wrong, because I thought the last line, he said, now imagine if the remix was made by the original person. But that's not the line. As the analogy goes, is like someone makes a song after their friend is hit by a bus. Then a remix is made, which kind of messes it all up, but is really popular. And then Simon Pegg says, now imagine if that remix was made by the bus driver. And it's meant to be a gut punch type thing, like, oh, this really popular song that sort of remixes and kind of messes up the original song is made by the person who killed the friend. Oh my god, that's so terrible. Which doesn't really work as a gut punch when I address it in my video. Toho sold the rights to Godzilla to the American studios and oversaw like the final edit and okayed it. So the equivalent analogy would be if the bus driver, after running over the friend and inspiring the song, went to the person, the music maker, and said, "Oh hey, that song about you made about your friend who I killed. Can I like remix it?" And then the person said, "Yeah, sure. Do you want me to work with you on it?" "Yeah, sure, work with me on it." And then the person whose friend has been run over by the bus driver is now working with the bus driver to make their song and make money off it, make it really. It doesn't work, Simon.
Not to mention, like, I can take it even a step further than that because, the whole analogy of the bus driver hitting somebody and the friend making a song response, that applies way back in the 50s when World War II was still fresh because, bus driver is supposed to be America, the bus is supposed to be the bomb, the friend is supposed to be Hiroshima, and so on. But, you know, the movies he's talking about as the Rock'em Sock'em cultural appropriation things were made today. So we're not even talking about the original friend, bus driver, songwriter, and etc. It's more like their grandchildren are doing all of this. So, and
It's
they're removed from that original situation. They might remember it. It might still have an effect, but it's not like they're the people directly involved either.
It's
So,
very much that the more you look into this analogy, the more it falls apart because the
yeah,
American military are the ones that dropped the bombs on Japan. So in that analogy, it's not the bus driver who's coming to get the remix, it's I don't know, passengers on the bus who saw it happen, maybe. And then even the Ishiro Honda didn't make Gojira in response to World War II. He made it in response to Castle Bravo and the quite literal and metaphorical fallout from Castle Bravo.
yeah,
So
and the Lucky Dragon and everything.
it's so messed up. And then yeah, it's like you're saying, it's like the grandchildren or maybe even the great grandchildren of the people on the bus um, made films about this, made songs about the son. It
Yeah,
just falls apart.
yeah. And also, like, there's the stuff he was saying prior to that, where he's providing a little more about what he thinks about the original Godzilla and presumably Godzilla minus one and Shin Godzilla and everything. The ones that he considers the good artistic ones. I mean, how much of that? Did you watch his whole response? Do you remember the part where he seemed to imply that the movies were sort of a form of Japan questioning if they brought the destruction on themselves? Like, I think he used the word
Yes, I did see that.
self-flagellation.
Yeah.
That stuck out to me as weird because I've never gotten that impression from any Godzilla movie. The closest I can think of, like, minus one, they're self-flagellating on Koichi's part, but that's him. He doesn't represent all of Japan. He represents the people who survived and were weighed down by all of that stuff. And even then, he doesn't necessarily represent all of them because there are other people we see like that. He's his own character. As far as other movies go, I mean, certainly something like Godzilla versus King Ghidorah isn't self-flagellating. That's a movie where the idea of preventing Japan from taking over the world is a bad thing. But the closest I can think of to a Godzilla movie that gets even near where he was saying that would be GMK. But even then, that's not about Kaneko saying that Japan deserves to be destroyed for everything it did during the war. It's more saying you should, when it comes to the past, you should be respectful and be honest, because if you're not, the consequences will catch up with you. He doesn't say Japan sucks at the end. So yeah, that
Yeah,
struck
that would
me.
have been a great line to add at the end of the film.
Yeah. I mean, am I misreading that, or did you hear that too?
I did. He did say that it's about. He did mention. Oh, I wish I'd actually got the transcript for that one. I had to go back. Funny enough, I found those videos via your retweeting of Kaiju number 14's tweet. So I'd have to go find yours, then his, then watch the videos. But yeah, the I'm pretty sure he does say something about the it's the Japanese almost subconscious questioning of their actions and whether they brought um, the the bombings on themselves, and which is then reflected in Godzilla attacking Tokyo and whether and questioning whether they brought Godzilla on themselves. Which no, it's not in the film at all because there's absolutely nothing to say that the Japanese brought this on themselves. There are details. I still love this when you compare Gojira to Godzilla King of the Monsters exclamation mark. You see details that have been taken out of the original film, which I'm guessing Americans either wouldn't have got, or the American filmmakers went, "Oh, these are a bit iffy. We probably shouldn't put those in there." Like when they say, "Oh, there's this well is radioactive. Why is it only this one and not all the wells on the island, like it would be with radioactive rain?" And then there's a bit in later on in the train, which weirdly, the bit in the train feels very much almost recreated, like the shot, not necessarily the content, but the shot is recreated in -1. Because there's a woman talking to two guys, and she mentions about having survived Nagasaki, was it? I think she said she survived, and then she starts talking about radioactive fish, and there's like all these little details that are taken out of the American version.
Hmm.
And it's just a very much like victim stuff. It's like, yeah, we're victims of all this stuff that's going on. There is nothing about them causing any of it. Nothing.
Hmm. And again, any self-flagellation you might find, that's on Sarazawa's part, but that's because he accidentally has escalated the arms race. So,
Yes.
and that does introduce a certain nuance of he's got something equivalent to or worse than the bomb, and he's in a position to use it against something very similar to how America used the bomb against Japan. And that's sort of that kind of raises the self-reflecting question of if we had the same choice, would we do the same thing? But I don't think it's still in anywhere near what he was saying.
No, it's nothing like what Simon Pegg was referring to. So I don't know where Simon Pegg got this from, because even like you said, even in -1, the sort of self like heart like the negative feelings towards themselves isn't to Japan as a whole, isn't towards like Simon Pegg said, did we bring this on ourselves? Anything like negative brought up in there is either the characters individually, or it's just towards like how the government and the military treated the Japanese people. There's nothing overarching the whole thing of, yep, we brought the bombs on ourselves. Like, no, that's
Hmm.
not a thing.
And it's definitely not, but -1 is certainly critical of the Japanese government, but not of Japan itself, not of the culture, the people. The government, yes, but then again, they make a very good case for it. So I really don't see it. I it's weird. You would think Simon Pegg would, I don't know, he seemed like the sort of person who understands genres a bit more. He's made movies that are like brilliant parodies of other genres, and you can't really make a
Oh
good
yes.
parody unless you understand them. So it's just weird to hear him have a take like that.
I do like it. Yeah, exactly. Because he does feel like the nerd representation in Hollywood almost. He's the nerd who got to do all the nerdy things, like starring in Star Wars and Star Trek and
Mhm. Mission
Mission
Impossible.
Impossible films. Yeah, he's the nerd who did the things that other nerds would like to do. He's also sort of like the he's like the flip side of the coin. He is like the proper nerd reflection in like Hollywood, and then you've got Henry Cavill, who's like the Giga Chad nerd version of in nerd in Hollywood. But yeah, he does. He really does make me think of a casual nerd. Hmm. I did. Did I say this in my video? I can't remember. Because there's the term tourist that people like to use for people just sort of pop in, and go, oh look at this thing. Oh, here's my opinion. But and then there's other people like I think Simon Pegg, who's more like a casual, who does have an interest. Clearly, I mean, from his statement, he clearly has an interest in this. He's clearly thought about it,
Hmm.
but it doesn't sound like he's talked to anyone about it, which is what a lot of people here do. I'm talking to you about this. We've talked to each other on comments. I talked to Sea Monster about stuff, so on and so forth. We all talk to each other about this and get more knowledge from it.
Hmm.
Simon Pegg doesn't sound like he's done that.
Yeah, he seems like he kind of just came up with this stuff on his own and thought, that sounds good enough. So he puts it out there. But the thing is, though, like you said, he does sound like he has an interest. So uh, you would hope that would somehow lead to him having a better understanding. I mean, he apparently got a very strong reaction to that initial comment, which is why he made the response, but in the response he doubles down, like we demonstrated. So it almost makes me wonder: does his interest only extend as far as how he interprets it?
I'm gonna say it's a hard yes.
Hmm. Which is unfortunate, really. And, and I also find it so weird he brought up the cultural appropriation thing too. Like,
That was weird. That
yeah,
was very weird.
especially since
Especially considering. Oh yeah,
what
you go.
you go first. I want to hear what you said.
I was gonna say, especially since it's quite well known that Toho has a list of rules that they gave to the MonsterVerse. Like, okay, you can have Godzilla, but you have to go by these certain rules. He can't do this. He can't do that. He can't do certain things. It's like, yeah, you can't call it a cultural appropriation when the culture who you're quote unquote appropriating from is going, okay, yeah, sure, do it to these rules.
Yeah, and what I was gonna say was it's ironic, and this might be a spicy take, considering he's an Englishman who played a Scotsman in the Star Trek movies. But eh,
Yeah, fair enough. Mind you, that comes up a lot, doesn't it? It's like, can this person? You had Mel Gibson playing William Wallace.
hmm,
He's like, that's an Australian playing a Scotsman, sure. But then you got Mel Gibson playing Americans all the time. Isn't that cultural appropriation? Is that question just keeps going and going and going? What was it?
it's
Mad Max Furiosa or Fury Road? They had Chalice Therian or whatever her name was playing Furiosa, and it's like, hang on a minute, she's not Australian, blah 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 blah. It's like, okay, we're gonna make a prequel. Okay, who's in the prequel? Anya Taylor Joy.
yeah. I don't know. It's acting. Acting is about playing other parts. That's how I see it. But let's see. Should we check out what some of the comments are?
It's like saying everyone who ever plays a Macbeth play has to be, I don't know, everyone who ever plays Macbeth has to be Scottish. Every single actor has to be Scottish. No.
Or Hamlet being from being Danish or stuff, or anyone from the many Italian plays needing to be Italian.
I
Yeah,
was gonna say Shylock has to be Jewish Italian. A very specific thing.
yeah. So Othello has to specifically be a Moor. Yeah, that, yeah. That's a bit of a rabbit hole, of course. But oh, actually, we did get an answer on your earlier question. My name is actually a reference to my favorite character from my favorite JRPG series, Dot Slash Hack. His nickname in the game is the Terror of Death, which he got from imparting the fear of death onto his.
Okay.
There you go. I just wanted to highlight that because we were wondering about the semantics earlier. What else have we got? I think the one celebrity whose opinion on G-1 we embrace wholeheartedly is Steven Spielberg. Oh yeah.
I
Spielberg,
haven't
like,
seen his one actually.
Spielberg's quote, I believe, is that, well, I mean, Spielberg's a huge fan as well. So, and he being a cinephile who understands all the stuff, and probably because he also saw a little bit of Jaws in there, maybe he was enamored of -1. So,
I think someone pointed out in I think it was the comments of my Simon Pegg video. They said it's odd how -1, which hasn't seen a great theatrical release. I mean, I had to struggle to get hold of the fact that Shin Godzilla wasn't released in the UK, and I had to end up watching it via download that my mate got for me from um high seas. um the fact that I got to see -1 in the cinema is quite an astounding feat. So the fact that it's such a badly distributed film and it's getting so much praise is very odd. But then it's getting all this praise, which then puts a lot of eyes on the Godzilla franchise, which is why people are saying that we're living in the best time to be a Godzilla fan because we've got so much content going on. But
hmm,
at the same time, it's then bringing the Godzilla franchise to the attention of people who probably shouldn't be saying anything about it.
yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
My current an ongoing issue, they keep teasing to start talking about it, is EFAP. I don't know if you're aware of them.
I am aware of them. I don't really watch them that much, but I am aware.
Yeah, their content has been going downhill of late. I'm actually thinking of making a video on it. But they made a video ages ago. They do these watch togethers called film name no EFAP movies film name, and they did one on Godzilla King of the Monsters, and it was appalling. Apparently, they did it because someone said to them that King of the Monsters is good because of all the fights. So they went into this film and they did a thing that everybody else does. They sat there with a stopwatch going, how long until the fight? So it's X amount of time. That's terrible. How long's the fights? It's this time. Oh, that's terrible. What are the people saying? Don't know. Not paying attention. It was, yeah, it was awful. It was up until recently. It was my major contention with EFAP that they just got so much wrong about it, and anyone who questioned it, they would just say, "Oh, it's a stupid Godzilla film."
Hmm. Yeah, although I suppose if there is a benefit to having certain people enter the discussion that have not the best takes, I mean, it does get people who actually are familiar with the material talking and maybe thinking, oh, wait a minute, I haven't thought about that part before, but now that I am, I can respond to it this way. So, you know, there is still a silver lining of a sort. Excuse
Of a
me.
sort, yeah. I do find that negative videos do get more attention than positive ones. Like people will
Yeah.
want to see what the drama is over what. Granted, the same says the person whose most successful video is a 2 hour praise video.
Mm. Well, there's something to be said for the positivity as well. People can only take so much negativity in one go, you know? Eventually they are going to want to find something that actually provides some positive reinforcement as opposed to negative.
Yeah, true. You can. That's why I bought the Incredible Hulk TV show on DVD. No, I didn't. I got it for Christmas. The Incredible Hulk TV show on DVD. And he like, yeah, this will be a fun like set of just you put these in, and it's really fun watching Lou Ferrigno painted green, beating people up. Really fun. You do it suddenly realizes about a couple of episodes in, you realize Bill Bixby, who plays David Banner rather than Bruce Banner because they thought the name Bruce sounded too gay. Um, every single episode, someone's trying to kill him, or he ends up in some situation where he nearly dies. You know, like, after a while, you realize, Jesus Christ, this world is incredibly depressive because everyone keeps trying to kill him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fugitive show really. And of course in the movies they introduce these weird versions of Thor and Daredevil. But I suppose you
Oh yeah, no, they're hilarious. The Daredevil one's particularly hilarious.
haven't.
The special effects on it are 50% really good. Like they do it in normal speed. So you see the Hulk throwing someone through a set of doors and it looks really aggressive and really, or he punches someone through a window
Hmm.
and it's done at full speed and it looks really good. And then sometimes they do these really weird, like sped up bits, which is just like you just press fast forward on the video. How do you think people are going to react to that?
Yeah. Or sometimes it's the sped up to be slowed down stuff. So it's suddenly
Oh
slow
yeah,
motion.
my favorite one. I still remember it because it just stood out so much. When Kingpin, who's played by oh god, what's his name? The actor who played Gimli. I can't remember his name
Oh,
now.
John Rhys-Davies.
Yes. He's playing Kingpin and he's like, right, I all know Daredevil's coming towards me. I'm gonna get into my rocket car and fly away. And it's not a rocket car, it's just like a hover car and it moves incredibly slowly. So there's just this clip of Daredevil standing next to this car as it very slowly rises up next to his hands are literally he raises his hands up like damn you king his hands are literally touching it. It's so slowly rising. It's just but they're trying to make it look like he's getting away. It's hilarious.
Yeah. They just don't make them like that anymore.
For good reason.
Let's see. Oh, wait a minute. Sea Monster says GMK involves Japan condemning its sins in World War II. Oh yeah, it definitely does. It's acknowledging that, and that was in response to how, culturally speaking, those what Japan had done during World War II, specifically the worst stuff, was largely omitted from the curriculum when it was being taught. Although at the same time, like I said, I don't necessarily think it comes down on the side of Japan deserves to be destroyed because of it. It's more that Japan deserves Japan has had the consequences catch up to it because they've forgotten, because they're not treating the past with respect in any regard. Throughout that whole movie, we don't just see the whole idea of uh, people forgetting what the war was like, people forgetting that Godzilla attacked. We also see ancient sacred sites and statues getting destroyed by these teenagers who are just being completely disrespectful. That there's sort of a kids these days attitude to GMK in a way. But I do think the message is that you gotta acknowledge the past. And Japan's past, it has some pretty dark stuff. It has great stuff about it too. But still, I don't necessarily think it gets to the point of the whole self-flagellating, we deserve to be bombed again and again kind of attitude. Or maybe that's exaggerating, but it doesn't have the thing that Simon Pegg was saying. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I've ever seen anything that even remotely comes close to. But GMK is probably the closest we get to. Yeah, Japan was kind of terrible in a lot of ways. I nearly swore then. Uh, Japan's kind of terrible in a lot of ways during the war, and yeah, we really shouldn't forget that because then it affects. It's almost like GMK is almost like acknowledging the fact that Godzilla versus King Ghidorah had some rather dodgy nonsense in it, and GMK is almost like, so let's counter that with this much better film. Um, there was a Netflix uh document. No, it's not a documentary. Dramatization of the Japanese equivalent of the Nuremberg trials, and they brought up a lot of details in that, which is just like, yeah, I'll need to read up more on what happened in the Pacific because some of the things the Japanese did were horrible.
Yeah.
Just like I think one of them they had on the judges. One of them was from one of the Indonesian islands, and he said the Japanese came there, got all the young men, fit young men, and just made them march continuously, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in the heat, no water. And if anyone fumbled, they'd shoot them and stuff like. And it's just like flipping heck. These guys were just they weren't great. So it's the idea of it's almost like you can never quite accept any kind of victim like trying to think of the word. You can't think of Japan as a pure victim when it comes to being bombed by the Americans because some of the things they did were absolutely terrible, and the things they potentially would have done. Because I think the big reason for the bombs was that if America tried to invade Japan, um, the casualties would have been enormous. The bombs would have looked like nothing compared to the absolutely horrible consequences of trying to invade Japan. But then on the other hand, they were nuked. So it's kind of
Yeah.
yeah, they're not blameless, but that was quite harsh.
Yeah, that was the logic. And no country ever goes into a war and comes out of it smelling like a rose. America did some pretty bad stuff during the war too. Like while over across the Pacific, Japan was treating the people of the conquered territories or the POWs in the worst imaginable ways. We over here were rounding up Japanese Americans, whether they were newly immigrated or like multi-generation, and putting them into places where they would be easier to keep an eye on because there was some paranoia around there. That's not one of our best moments from World War II, certainly. So I mean, no nation is truly blameless in a war. regardless of what the morality might be that you can debate about it with hindsight. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Oh yeah, there's one of my favorite ones was there was a TV film. I don't know if they never released it anywhere else. I'm surprised it's not on Netflix. I think it was called Christmas Day, and it was about the football match they had on the Western Front in World War One. I don't know if you're aware of that one.
The Christmas truce, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, the the film, they show it like how it happened. Like they were singing Christmas songs, and because everyone's like Christian, it's they're singing the same songs. It's different language, but you can hear the tunes. So then everyone sort of singing together, and then they got together and they had mass at one point. I think it was a Scottish guy gave mass because he was a priest. Um, when they got separated up, because obviously once they'd done that, they're like, well, we don't really want to shoot each other anymore. So then they got in trouble with that with the various armies. And there's a bit where a priest is talking to what was it, a bishop, whoever the higher ranking one was talking to the Scottish priest. He said, "Why did you give mass?" He's like, well, "Because they're all Christian. It was Christmas Day. It felt right." And then the higher up guys, "No, no, it was terrible. We're going to have a thought about what we're going to do with you now." And then the higher up guy goes into a chapel and starts preaching to the soldiers. It's perfectly fine for you to kill the Germans. It says in the Bible about like killing people, so you should be fine killing them. And that was a thing that happened in the First World War. They would drop leaflets and no, they wouldn't. They would give leaflets to their soldiers, like say, this is all the things that the other side have done, and like soldiers skewering babies, which is a direct copying of some of the like wood carvings that they did during the I think it was the invasion of Ireland by Oliver Cromwell, because a lot of the stuff in there they showed like Cromwell's men skewering babies, and it's just a direct copying of that to these leaflets to show, look how terrible the other side is. You don't want to let any of these guys live. But then when the war ended, it's like, okay, everyone's fine now. And then the soldiers are like, wait, hold on a minute. But didn't you say they skewed babies? What? Baby? No, no. Don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Hmm. World War One was certainly a messed up war.
Very much so.
Amazing stories that come out of it, both tragic and inspiring, of course. I mean, like, you have the story of Lawrence of Arabia or anything like that. That's just the like one of the most obvious ones. Although
Oh
then
yeah.
on the other hand, you have everything that happened at Gallipoli. So yeah, it was what's the line I think from Blackadder? The reason they had a war is because had just become too difficult not to have one.
Something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I have to rewatch that again. That series was great. One of
it's
the worst little sort of details from the First World War is one of those. It's one of those ones that just makes you go, "Oh God damn it!" And it was a soldier who had survived the entire war, and then 20 minutes from the last armistice, he was shot by somebody. And you think, "Oh, who would have done that? Who would have shot somebody that close to the end of the war?" It's like, well, one, that wasn't the end of the war. That was the armistice. The war ended a year later. Two, when they knew that was happening, they didn't go. It's not like the end of the day at work. It's not like half an hour before Friday end of work. You go, oh well, I'll just calm down. I'll take it easy. No, they were just like, oh my god, we're gonna get an armistice. Quick, everybody, use all of your bullets. Shoot everything. Get as many kills as possible. And
mm,
that's when this guy died. It's such an, and again, it's all down to that propaganda stuff. It's just like we need to kill these people because these people are evil. It doesn't matter whether we're going to stop firing soon. We need to kill them soon, quick, now. And it's just, yeah, just how wars work. You put into it what you get out of it, and that's what happens. People die for no good reason.
yep. Well, we certainly didn't plan on discussing the intricacies of warfare vis-a-vis the Great War when we started this, but hey, that's one of the benefits of having no plan. I mean,
There you go, where it
that was
goes. But
fascinating.
I mean, it all works into it, doesn't it? It's like Simon Pegg says something stupid about, oh, Godzilla was about like self-flagellation, and then you go into the intricacies of why would Japan be self-flagellating. You go into the things that they did, and you go into war atrocities, and you start talking about historical war atrocities, and then you end up talking about skewering babies. I mean, it's perfectly natural.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, there's a comment in here. Let's see. You familiar with the graphic novel They Called Us Enemy? I signaled out that one because I feel like it might be tied to what we were discussing. I actually haven't read that one. I don't know if I've even heard of it before. Have I? I don't know. When you go to the bookstore, the graphic novels section is mostly Marvel and DC. And by DC, I mean Batman. So that one probably gets buried. But who's the author? Sounds like it might be interesting. If you have anything to
Uh,
say, go ahead. I'm just gonna look this up.
no, I'm not a big book person. I rarely read comic books. I sometimes read them online. Once upon a time, was reading like the two big ones, Attack on Titan and Berserk, at one point. Then I stopped reading them when they started getting silly.
Well, I'll be. It's by George Takei.
Really?
Yeah, George Takei.
Oh, is that about going into those internment camps
Yeah, I
you
think
were
so.
talking about?
Hmm. Yeah.
Ooh,
Well.
I might have to look at that.
Yeah. Same here. So yeah. Anyone else who thinks that sounds interesting? It's They Called Us Enemy. George Takei's name is on it. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on for the future. Now let's see. Any other? Let's see. Oh, also someone asked any thoughts on the All Quiet on the Western Front remake. I haven't actually seen that one yet. You see it or see the original or?
No, I haven't. I keep hearing about it, and every single time, like, oh, I should read that, look at that, watch that, and then never do. Like so many things on my
Yeah,
list.
indeed.
I kind of feel bad now because I watched the flipping Barbie film.
Really?
Yeah, someone at work told me a part of that, and I said, no, that can't be a thing. Surely that just sounds too stupid. And then I watched it, and yes, it is a thing, and it is very stupid. Well, not stupid. It's almost insulting. The bit where
That-
the Barbies take back their stuff and the way they do it. It's like, are
yeah,
you really?
yeah. I've seen some of the clips of the behind the scenes with the writer and director because they're husband and wife, I believe. And the guy who wrote it, like, it is so obvious that he cannot believe his career brought him to the point where he's writing a Barbie movie. It's it's so interesting to just see him sitting there in his chair looking like, I want out of here so badly. Why am I talking
I'll have
about
to watch
this?
those now. But I did like the fact that the film was very it predicted quite a lot because you got the Barbie film. It's all about the Barbies and the things the Barbies do and everything, the cultural impact on Barbies. And what comes out of it? I'm just Ken. Everyone else, anywhere else, I'd be a 10. It's like that film, that song ended up in the Oscars. That Ken ended up getting like best supporting actor, all this sort. And then in the film, or watching the film, it's like, yeah, the Ken stuff's selling really well, and they're casting for the film, which is already a smash hit. You're like, wow, this film actually predicted
Yeah,
the Ken stuff.
that was everything surrounding the Barbie movie was just so ridiculous. Um,
It's like there's a good message in there. I can see the message in there, and it just the way that they did it was just so odd. Especially the bit I saw, I went, are they? Do they not realize what they've done here? And it was Ken and Barbie roller skating down Venice Beach, wherever the hell beach it was, and they're both dressed very similarly, like in that really loud, like pink and blue colorizations. And they're both going along. They're both being wolf whistled and being told, "Yeah, look at you! Oh, awesome!" And Barbie's going, "Oh, I feel so scared. I feel very self-conscious. Or I don't like this." And then Ken's going, "Yeah, I'm getting all this attention. Yeah, this is great. I feel great." It's like they're both getting exactly the same reactions, but they're both interpreting it very differently. And I think the film was supposed to be saying, "Look how terrible it is for the women," but the film just says, "So all of this is just your own personal interpretation of outside um input." So all the women being scared of everything is basically just them not interpreting it the same way as men. It's like, that's a film. Do you realize what you're doing?
Yeah. Then again, Barbie is anything you want her to be, right? So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
suppose.
interesting comment just popped up here from Kaijunot. Do you think it's inappropriate to have Godzilla be a heroic character if he was originally an anti-nuke allegory? This is certainly one of the hotly debated points. You go first. You're the guest.
Well, this goes into a very similar conversation of should Godzilla be silly, which comes up a lot. Um, Godzilla being a hero, um, it's an organic process because just like the silly stuff, Godzilla was originally dark, serious, social, political, metaphorical, monster, villain. Well, antagonist. What would you call it? A villain? Because technically he's also a victim. It's a complicated film. That's why it's such a good film.
Hmm.
Then you get to Godzilla versus Megalon, and he's like throwing peace signs and like shaking hands with the gay robot and stuff like this. It's like, so how the hell do you connect these two things together? And the response is 20 years of films, almost a film every year, almost. I think I have to look back at that. But yeah, like I said, there's more Godzilla films in the Showa era than there are Kong films. Full stop. So the fact that there's so many films and it's a progression with Son of Godzilla smack bang in the middle, where Godzilla is smashing up people's houses, but also saving his son from being eaten. It's it's a natural organic progression of a horrible monster turning into an anti-hero, turning into a high-fiving hero.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it is a completely fine thing for Godzilla to be interpreted as a hero. Um, but if it literally jumped, if you had Simon Pegg's interpretation of it, then the Americans like stole Godzilla and then turned him into a WWE wrestler hero character, then yeah, that would be pants on so many levels. But that's not what happened. It was again a very organic process. So yeah, and weirdly, it's kind of I kind of compare it to Lovecraft writing in that sort of sense. You can jump on into almost any of these films, and you don't necessarily need the previous on to enjoy the film.
Hmm.
You can then watch the other films and just see different interpretations of Godzilla. Then when you start working out the progression of it, you can sort of see how he got there. But so yeah, answer the original question. Yeah, Godzilla being a hero is absolutely fine, especially the MonsterVerse, where it's a more complicated sort of hero. He's not a hero of people, which is something that I've seen YouTubers get confused on. Is that he's not he's not there to save people, he's there to save the world. And those two things aren't necessarily the same, especially when people are harming the world.
Hmm. Yeah. And, I've heard other people say, and I think this is an interesting observation, that you can also view Godzilla going from villain to hero as sort of reflecting Japan's evolving views on nuclear energy itself. Because they got introduced
Oh
to it as
yeah.
a bomb like everyone else. But then, of course, they started making nuclear power plants to run stuff. I mean, recently that wound up causing issues, and as you can see, back over in Japan, Godzilla's the villain again. But you can see that progression happening alongside of it, I think, where starts off as something dangerous and harmful and to be feared. Then, as time goes along and you're becoming more familiar with it, you realize maybe it's not so bad. Maybe it's actually helpful. Well, wait a minute, unforeseen problems. So, that it, like you said with the MonsterVerse, it's a very complex issue. And again, with the and getting to the MonsterVerse, like, yeah, Godzilla's not a hero of the people, he's a hero of the world. Of course, people live on the world. So the idea there is that sort of I mean, I've said in other videos, mankind has to kind of fall in step with Godzilla in order for him to actually be the hero of the people as well as the world. It's that sort of I guess it's sort of like you can, like they said, it's very complicated. You can liken it to man's relationship with nature, man's relationship with God, whatever you go with, because there are those layers to be found within those movies. Unless, of course, they're just having a crazy adventure like in the more recent ones. Although that that's like I know you're not the biggest fan of the more recent movies.
No, um, I did. There's actually really good. Weirdly, one of the good things I liked about Godzilla X Con, absolutely by accident, apparently, from what I've heard,
Hmm?
is Godzilla going to sleep in the Colosseum? Because when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's kind of like when he went to sleep in Atlantis, even though I don't think it's ever mentioned or called Atlantis in the film. The ancient city that was drowned. He
Yeah.
sleeps in the middle of that, and there's a canyon that goes straight through the middle of the city, which is clearly where he would have walked through to get to his temple. So then, and then you see in Godzilla X Con, he's walking along the river and he makes a beeline from the Colosseum to the river. So clearly, he's doing something very similar. It's almost like he's chosen, like he went to Italy, fought Scylla, flipping heck that whole thing. I think everybody and their mother has just complained about that. Um, And then when he's there, he's like, "Oh, look, an ancient sort of like temple like thing. I can get in this. Yeah, I can sit here. Yeah, I'll be like like in the old times, next to the people and all that." And that's sort of like what you were talking about, like sort of working with Godzilla. So
Hmm.
he's working with people. It's like he's chosen one of their bit. This building will work. I was sitting here, and then he's making the effort to go from there to the river and then along the river because that's got the least amount of human habitation going on.
Hmm.
It now means that Italy can't have any bridges, but and they're going to have to like clear that path between the Colosseum and the river. But that is a quite physical representation of working with Godzilla and the Titans. It's basically what they're going to have to do on a larger scale, which you see a lot in the MonsterVerse. Is like it's Godzilla killing the monsters. The whole um, if the entire film is meant to be an allegory for um oh god, climate change. If the whole thing is meant to be an allegory for climate change and the effect people are having on the climate, then stuff like Serizawa sacrificing himself to get Godzilla up and running again is representational of the sacrifices that we as the human race and the culture and whatnot will have to make to essentially stop the planet from killing us. It's it's all in there. It's all nice and complicated, and it's why I love the films
Hmm.
up until recently.
Although you also recently did a video about comparing King of the Monsters to the biblical book of Revelation. I found that one fascinating.
Oh yeah, there's loads of stuff, and there's bits I missed because Godzilla King of the Monsters has so many details in it.
Hmm.
You keep going back to it, and oh, there's a new thing I missed. Oh my god, that's good. And it's the in Revelations, there's a bit about I'm trying to remember now. It's a mother carrying a child who then gets chased by the dragon, and there's meant to be a lot. I think Jesus then comes along to save the woman and fight the dragon being Satan. I think there's meant to be a lot of interpretation as to what the child is meant to represent. Is it meant to represent the humanity? Is it meant to represent the new world? etc., etc. And suddenly hit me that what's happening in the film, Emma Russell is just carrying her daughter around everywhere. She's trying to protect her now only child. Doesn't go quite right,
Hmm.
but then what happens later on? Madison then uses the orca to stop all the times, and then Ghidra, the multi-headed dragon, starts chasing her around, and our Jesus figure, Goji, comes along to save her. And it's like they basically did a one-to-one with the flipping Book of Revelation in there, and I completely missed it.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there, and I think a lot of people missed the Revelation allegories because Michael Dougherty said he in the behind the scenes he was raised Catholic. He would in his Sunday school papers he would draw Godzilla into the little images that he would get handed of biblical scenes, like Godzilla's destroying the wall of Jericho alongside the Israelites, and I think all of that had to be deliberate, of course. There's all kinds of imagery, all kinds of parallels. And I think that was missed by a lot of people, probably because society's so far removed from anything to do with religion at all. Like that gets overlooked in a lot of things. In Fritz Lang's Metropolis, a lot of people talk about how Maria is the first on-screen robot. No one talks about how she's also meant to be the whore of Babylon. I'm sorry, that's what the term is. But there are apocalyptic things in that film too that never get discussed when people are bringing it up. And I think King of the Monsters, that had to be part of it as well. It's structured in such a way that you can look at it as some religious allegory, you can look at it as environmentalist allegory. So, like any good piece of art, there's more than one way to interpret what's there. Not that I'm advocating death of the author, because obviously, if you're going to start looking at it and thinking that I don't know, somehow Godzilla represents the Illuminati overlords or something. Hope the live stream didn't get terminated when I mentioned that. Um,
I know it's just
hmm?
um, but yeah, Death of the Author. I'd go for Death of the Author because there's lots of things where you can watch it and get stuff out of it, and then you might watch what the original creator says, and then that's nothing to do with what you thought of it, and it's like, well, I still think this, and I still get that out of it,
Mm,
so yeah, that's what I'm taking from it. But that's why I kind of like Godzilla King of the Monsters. There's so much to it,
mm,
just so much going on with it, and it's just how did he put all this together? How did he get this so intricately put together? Especially the Mark Russell stuff. I want to make a video specifically about Mark Russell and his comparison to Joe Brody, because in a few ways they have quite a lot of similarities. Quite a lot. I don't know how I managed that. Um, they have a lot of similarities, but Mark Russell has a different ending to because they both end up being stuck on the death of a family member and like their obsession with it. And yeah, like with Joe Brody, it goes quite badly for him.
mm,
With Mark Russell, he has the turning point and it goes well for him. So it's like examining those two things together, I think will be quite interesting. And
yeah.
it's something people often overlook. It's one of those things that really annoys me about people talk about King of the Monsters. They say, "Oh, the people are boring and terribly written." It's like, have you actually watched those scenes? Have you actually listened to the things that's being said? No,
Mm.
probably not.
I feel the same could be done for Emma Russell. A lot of people say that she has confused motivations and her arc doesn't make sense. I don't know. I feel like there is more that makes sense about it than most people would care to admit. But
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, just the little details that, and again, King of the Monsters is so well written. They don't have huge. Mm, people complain about exposition dumps. Like people will start talking to each other in very unnatural ways just to get information across. But King of the Monsters has so like tiny little details which are just thrown in there. One of my favorite ones is Mark Russell says when talking about the Orca, um, he says, "Oh, that was just a post grad project." I think he says, or a grad school project. I was like, grad school, grad school. Which ones? How does that translate into like England? And I looked it up, and it's like, oh, that's a master's degree. That gets him a doctorate. So
Mm-hmm.
he's a doctor, Mark Russell. Is that what would he be a doctor? Well, he made the Orca, so probably engineering. So like, okay, so you got Doctor Mark Russell, Master Engineer. Yeah. Oh, that's a hell of a lot to get out of one detail.
And he'd have to
And he
also have
gets
something in like bioacoustics. So he's really smart.
yeah. That's why it really annoys when you see people in like my Godzilla reviews video. Um, for anyone who hasn't watched it, Godzilla reviews or how I learned to hate people and love the big G. In that I examined a lot of YouTubers who made reviews of Godzilla King of the Monsters, and one that really got me because a lot of them don't mention specifics. As Sea Monster will know, Chris Duckman mentioned a specific, and it was so wrong. I lost my There's one from Angry Joe. It's not Angry Joe himself. It's his mate, or one of his mates. Says, and again, they don't mention any specifics. They just say, "Oh, it's terrible. It's this. It's terrible. It's boring." And then they give a specific. They give details, and the guy says he tried to fix a submarine. What does he think he is? He's not anybody. Like, what do you mean he tried to fix a submarine? Who's he? What is he talking about? And of course, it just shows that he wasn't paying attention to the film or can't remember it properly, and he's angry about something that didn't happen.
Hmm. Maybe he was thinking about like when Mark goes to try and fix the doors on the Argo, which isn't a submarine.
He was probably thinking about that, but he doesn't remember it properly. So he remembers that the sub broke, and then he remembers that Mark Russell fixed something, and he just mashed those two things together and got angry about it.
And technically Mark didn't even really fix anything. He just found a way
Broke
to
it some more.
waste, yeah, broke it some more, wasted taxpayer dollars by destroying an osprey unnecessarily. But it got the people saved. So
Unfortunately, he didn't have any DW40 on him, or he could have done the engineer's flowchart.
yeah. But yeah, like you said, there are a lot of smaller details in there. So it's it really is a very layered movie. I do think, well, while I still enjoy the latter day MonsterVerse stuff, Skull Island animated notwithstanding, um, I do think that King of the Monsters may actually be my favorite of the MonsterVerse movies. So, because it's got those layers, and it also has all the stuff that as a fan I would want to see, to have that rivalry between Godzilla and Ghidorah have some real meat behind it, to have Rodan back and more impressive than he's been before, to have that meaningful connection between Godzilla and Mothra, to see those parallels between the human characters and the monster characters, even if in some cases they didn't go as far as they could, like keeping Alan Jonah around for the finale. Maybe that was a missed opportunity, although maybe it wasn't, because that might have overcomplicated something that already had a lot going on. But still, there's so much good in there, and combine that with some great visuals and a really great soundtrack. I don't know. It just felt like I do think that would be my favorite of the MonsterVerse if somebody were to ask me. Mm,
I absolutely agree. There's so much good about
mm.
Godzilla King of the Monsters, so much good, and then people pew pew it all the time, and it's just like, dude, I don't get it. I don't understand why they don't like this film. There's so much that's good about it, and it offers all of the things. It offers deep meaning. It offers like the flashy spectacle. It's got the fights. It's got the metaphors and allegory, and it's got so much going on here. It's all in there, and it all gets time. Let's face it. because you can get it all out of there, and then people still don't like it because that and that doesn't make sense either. Again, I go into it in my reviews video. People say the fights aren't long enough. It's like, do you not have you actually watched and worked out how long they are? Because there are fights in proper fight films which don't last as long as some of the fights in this film,
Hmm.
and it's purely interpretive. It's purely relative.
And it even feels kind of like a double standard where that like you said, there are people going in expecting nonstop monster fights, and when there's space between those fights, like there would be in any action movie, they treat that as a bad thing. It feels so weird to think that. Like any other action movie, you you figure there's going to be space between the fights, which is only natural. It can't just be nonstop action all the time. But when you apply it to a kaiju movie, whether you're a diehard fan or someone who just popped in to say hello, suddenly that becomes an issue. I mean, even Godzilla Kong the New Empire isn't nonstop fights. There are plenty of scenes where there are no people, sure, but people describe that as nonstop fights, and then they use that as a negative there because where's all the substance? But but there's still moments where it's not fighting. I don't know. It just feels like back and forth, back and forth. Depends on the weather, which direction the wind is blowing. It just feels so weird to me sometimes.
Even the raid has points where they're not fighting; they're talking to it. If you popped into started watching the raid at certain points in the film, you were thinking, "Why are they talking? Where's there so much talking going on?" And with this, with regard to the opinions changing, we did the stream on Chris Stuckman's various videos on the MonsterVerse, which was very interesting to see Stuckman's progression from over like 10 years worth of films. And it struck me how all his reviews are basically the same, where he says there's monster fights and there's some people talking in it, and then his opinions of that just change from one film to the next. Is like, oh, there's fights in it, but there's boring people stuff in it as well. And or then the next film, oh, there's boring people stuff, but there's fights in it. It's just that over and over again. It's how can you do these videos? I suppose they're over the years separating them. So and he probably doesn't watch his old content back, which is why you can get these completely contradictory statements which are exactly the same statements, just with a different inflection,
Hmm.
which is the funniest part about it. It's just a different inflection.
Yeah, it can be weird sometimes. What's this one? All I will say about Chris Stuckman is that he's become somewhat of a shill due to him wanting to break into the film business. Oh yeah, that whole thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was quite funny to find out about.
yeah, but he's got enough flack for that now, though.
That was an
Um,
interesting thing to find see on because obviously Godzilla X Kong, Godzilla versus Kong. Lots of people like that. Lots of people didn't like that. But Godzilla X Kong, even people who like it seem to acknowledge the fact that it's terrible. There's when you're watching Chris Stuckman's video on it, he's very positive. Oh, there's people in it, but the monster fights are good. But even he acknowledges some of the bad points about it. He even throws in a couple of negative points. He's like, wait a minute, I thought you were supposed to be entirely positive. How is he making these negative comments about it? And it's either he learned from his Madam Web video and thought, well, I should probably say some negative stuff
hmm.
just so people don't have a go at me, or the film is actually that bad that he had to say something negative about it. Either way, it's a fascinating progression in his thought process.
Yeah, well, but he's trying to break into the film industry, but has he yet? I don't think so. And he's trying to do so at a point where Hollywood's kind of on the rocks. So
Yeah, I know he made an independent film ages ago, and I saw people looking at that, and that was but apparently he's supposed to be making a film. I don't know how it's going. I've not heard much about it recently, but apparently he's supposed to be making a film.
Well, I don't know. I don't really follow Chris Stuckman that much myself. It's always bizarre that there'll be these YouTubers I know about simply because they're bigger channels, but I don't really watch their content. And then suddenly something will pop up in my feed that says, "Oh, this big content creator just ruined his entire career with this mistake." And yeah, and I'm like, "Oh, that happened? Boy, I was away for a while, wasn't I?"
Off Boogie 2988.
Oh yeah, he did that recently. In Praise of Shadows is the subject of that. It's yeah,
The one that the stuff like you saying that YouTubers that you're aware of and have big numbers and you've never watched them yourself. There's Stuckman I was not aware of at all until EFAP like mentioned him and then covered one of his videos. That was the only time I ever knew about him. But then there's stuff like Critical Drinker. Like he grew over time, and I was subscribed to him at one point because of his appearance in EFAP. So I was like, oh, he seems alright. Started watching him, and he's one of those people where you're subscribed to them and you watch their stuff, and then you don't watch their stuff as much, and then they'll say something in one of their videos that makes you go, hang on a minute, no, that's
Mhm.
not right, and then you unsubscribe. And for Critical Drinker, it was these he's oh god, his black people allegory or comparison.
Mhm.
I'm guessing from the nodding, you're aware of that one.
I'm aware that it's been around for a very long time. He did not
But
originate it, but he kept it going.
but that was the thing when watching it was his reaction to the trailer for Godzilla versus Kong. So before um the film came out, he just watched the trailer, so he had absolutely no context for seeing Kong in chains on a boat, but decided that was ample information to compare him to black slavery. And it's one of those things. I called it a circle of thinking, because you start with, is Critical Drinker racist? Then you go, well, no, he's a film critic. He knows about film. He's probably heard about the fact that Kong was a racist allegory back in the day. But Kong isn't a racist allegory. That was just made up by people who didn't know what they were talking about. They just that was more recent things. And it's like, so why has he thought? Why has he made his comparisons? Oh well, because he saw a gorilla on a boat in chains and thought it looked like black people. Slave. He's Critical Drinker racist.
Yeah.
It's just you start in one place and you go all the way around back to the beginning.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think either of us know for sure, but at this point, I think the whole Kong is a racist allegory thing is one of those things people say out loud, and everyone looks at that person and says, I think you just said more about yourself than you did about what you were discussing.
Yes.
So, yeah,
We'll wait for Simon Pegg's next video when he mentions that.
we will see. but but yeah, that Kong as slavery allegory goes all the way back to criticism of Kong 33. Well, yeah, it's nothing new. The stereotype of comparing black people and gorillas is pretty old, but there was a certain point where it just stopped being a thing, where it was no longer really done as much, so it just sort of faded from people's minds. And nowadays, nobody really makes that connection automatically unless there's something about the way they view the world that brings them to that conclusion. So I've been ending a lot of sentences that way this time just by going, so I don't know why I'm doing that this time.
Because there is a lot of things where it's just like you start somewhere, you're going somewhere, and then the thought progresses and builds and builds, and then I keep doing this whilst talking, and I was like, right, how did I start? How did I start this? Where did I start this line from? How do I loop back to it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the hazards of working without a script.
Oh god, yeah. My Simon Pegg video was originally going to be just unscripted. Just I'll stick a microphone on my face and I will read what he says and then talk about what he says. I tried doing that. It did not go well, so I scripted it.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think it turned out well, of course.
Thank you.
We've added some stuff here, but even so, I do still encourage people to watch your original as well. Watch your and to watch your other stuff too, of course.
Oh yes,
So
definitely watch everything, everything, watch everything, and
yeah,
then watch Omniviewer's video on Simon Pegg when he gets around to making it, because I'm sure he's going to have a lot more to say about it than I did.
we will certainly see. You, I remember and you've done other stuff beyond kaiju stuff. You did a pretty lengthy breakdown of Glass Onion at one point, I believe.
Oh yes, that's one of those videos that will I'm always going to hold that up as an example of just how much work goes into a video, because that was one where it was when I was still unemployed, but I was getting a job. So I was like, right, I need to make this video as quickly as possible, because once I get a job, I'm not going to have time to do it.
Hmm.
Which is why I'm not making as many long videos anymore, because just time, energy, health. Um, Glass Onion took me 14 days to make, from recording it, like recording the bits from the film on Netflix to uploading the video. 14 days. It was 10 hours a day, so 140 hours, because
Hmm.
I'd wake up, work on the video, eat, work on the video, sleep. That was 10 days straight of just working on that video, and that came out with a, was it 1 hour 48-minute video.
Yeah, it was it was worth it though. Yeah,
Oh
because
yeah, just some of the stuff that I noticed is just like hilarious. It's like other people are talking about this detail, that detail, and it's like, you hang on, that why does it, the bit where she walks up to the pool and then walks away, and then seemingly in the same shot she teleports down below it, and you're like, how did they do that? How did they do that and not think, hang on a minute, this doesn't translate very well. People might get confused. But no, they put it in there, and yeah, it just looks like she teleports through time and space in instants.
yeah, had to say nothing of everything else. Glass Onion is one of those movies I'm still surprised people talk about it being so brilliant when it really doesn't make sense. It
Weirdly, the glass onion stuff, the like halfway through the film, it then cuts back to the beginning, but now you're looking at it from a different perspective,
Mhm.
would have worked very well for Knives Out, because you could have had the first half of the film being from Benoit Blanc's perspective,
Mm.
and then like I'm trying to, when that woman like is found dead, or no, dying. When she's found dead or dying, you can then cut back to the start of the story again, but tell it from the girl's perspective. And that would have worked very well, because then you could have had both ends. You could have gone from being suspicious of the girl to then seeing it from her perspective and how not suspicious you should be. It wouldn't help any of the plot issues with Knives Out, but it
Mm.
would have been more interesting.
Yeah. Looks like you've got a question in the comments here. Question for C Animus. What are some of your favorite non-Godzilla kaiju stories in media?
Oh, that's a hmm. Well, a lot of Mel Brooks stuff. I find a lot of his stuff very interesting.
Mm.
Just the entire mix of like the fourth wall breaks mixed in with like satire of films and whatnot. I love the fact that Spaceballs is entirely all the merchandise stuff is in there because George Lucas told him he couldn't make merchandise from it. Little stuff like that. Ray Harryhausen, I have his collection. I love some of his details.
Mm.
The one that I saw pointed out in one of the documentaries, which I will repeat to anybody who will listen, is in Valley of the Guanji, where they're trying to capture Guanji. You have the cowboys on horses with lassos around Guanji, and in one shot, you've got this seamless, like, it's not even transition. It's literally just a shot of Guanji, the cowboys and horses, and the ropes. And someone pointed out, it's like, where's the cut between the ropes? Because the ropes going between the cowboys and the dinosaur. The dinosaur's stop motion. The cowboys are real. Where's the connection? You're sitting there going, I can't actually tell. And it's
Yeah.
like, wow, that's some good effects right there. It's like, oh, is this like CGI computer? No, no, it's some guy with some clay.
Yeah.
It just tells you all the skill involved in that.
Mm.
Um, Other stuff, Columbo, like the Columbo series. Just the way it's like it's completely different from a lot of detective series. It tells you who the murderer is, and then you have to work back from like where does you're not working for when will come, who is it, who's the murderer. You're like, what clue tips off Columbo? And it's like seeing it from that perspective is always interesting. There's
Mm.
actually a video I wanted to make because of your Yongari. Was it Yongari? Not Yongari.
Well, I did come.
Reptilicus?
Oh, way back the atomic roast of Reptilicus.
No, no, it's your recent one. That's
No,
probably
Yongari and Reptilian. Yeah,
Reptili. That's it.
it's
Where you were
remade.
saying about reinterpreting ideas. Um, like whether you can take a one from a film that wasn't as good and putting it into something that was better. I started thinking about a specific plot point that's been used in three different pieces of media and how those pieces of media use that plot point and how just how differently they use it, which is someone not being put down the foundations of a building. It sounds like quite odd. Like not being put down the foundation, i.e., someone people think someone has been thrown down the foundations of a building and buried in concrete, but they haven't. And there's a film called How to Murder Your Wife from '62, I think it was, a Columbo episode called Blueprint for Murder, and then a book by Tom Sharp. I think it was his first one, Wilt, which was '76. And they all use this plot point and they all use it very differently and have very different like follow on and reactions to it. I just find that just the same idea, repurposed, reused. I just wanted to make a video on it to just explore just like you can have the same thing going on. You can use the exact same stuff, but because you do it differently, it makes a much it makes interesting stories, which is something that goes on in cinema a lot. You get people making the same, very similar film, well, similar plot points. Like I think it was Deep Impact and oh god,
Armageddon.
what was the
Armageddon.
Armageddon? Those two films came out very close together, and they're both about asteroids hitting the Earth, but they're
Yeah.
so different.
Hmm.
And then the one that always gets me, and like really kicking myself that you never got around to it. Prometheus came out, and apparently at the same time as Prometheus, Guillermo del Toro was going to do Mountain of Madness. And it's
Yep.
like, oh, we didn't want to make it because it's too similar to Prometheus. It's like, God damn it!
Yeah. Uh, although I keep racking my brain about how it could possibly be that similar because I've read the original story and I know he would stick to it as closely as he could while still making it cinematic. And I'm like, would it really be that similar? But was he
There was
planning some sort of medical thing where Tom Cruise gives birth to a Shoggoth or something? I don't know.
oh my God, I
Now
would love
now
to
the mental
see
image
that.
is in my head. I'm sorry.
There's there was a like the script was supposedly uploaded somewhere.
And there was a clip.
I don't know if it was the actual script or just someone's like saying this is the script. And I did read it. It's a PDF document, and Yeah, it's not that similar, really. I can't even imagine that. There's definitely scenes that look very sound, I should say, very thing-ish. But
Mm,
then you've got a Shogoff who is a big blob that can turn into different things, and
yeah.
basically the thing feels very like inspired by Mountains of Madness in that regard.
Well,
So it's kind of like oh god, what was John Carter of Mars situation?
yeah,
We have
where
the old story inspired loads of other stories, and then when they finally got round to making the film, people were like, this feels like a lot of other stories. Like, well, yes, because the original inspired. It's damn it.
yeah. Although the part of the problem with the John Carter movie is also that they basically mashed the first three books together when they could have just done them individually. They had a trilogy right there. I don't know. They, I'd like to see it done again, maybe in animation where they could have an easier time integrating everything. I think you've got another question here in the comments. There's been mention that Mel Brooks, I guess, wants to do a sequel to Spaceballs called The Schwartz Awakens. Do you think it'd work?
I'm sure that's an old one because I remember that from years ago. I'm
Yeah.
sure, unless it's just resurfaced.
He's, he's
I'm not
been
sure how it'd
threatening
work.
yeah,
Sorry, say?
he's been threatening a Spaceballs 2 for a while. And then there was the animated series that everyone wants to forget. But
I do like the threatening, but it's like they wanted to do not a sequel. They wanted to do a TV series of Blazing Saddles, didn't they?
well, actually I know the story behind that. They Warner Brothers originally wanted Blazing Saddles to be a franchise. So Mel Brooks basically got together with his lawyers and had them work out a contract where they said the only way that he would come back to direct Blazing Saddles 2 is if the studio made a complete TV series within a year of the movie's release. And he figured there's no way they'd be able to do that. So they he and his lawyer finalized it. The studio signed and agreed to it. And then a little like the following year, the producers called Mel in for a special screening of something, and they were showing him episodes of this Blazing Saddles series that they had made. And Mel realized, oh, the contract said they had to make it, didn't say anything about having to release it. So
Oh,
there is technically a series, and I think the first episode's a special feature on some DVDs and Blu-rays, but obviously nothing ever happened with that.
I suppose they could then that depending on that series, quote unquote.
Hmm.
There are different variations of series, so they could just make it like a 2 episode series.
Yeah.
Like that's actually quite tricksy. I like that. It's
Mm-hmm.
like I was watching a Monty Python documentary recently, and they were talking about the fact that um I can't remember what studio it was went to make Life of Brian, then they got quite like itchy about Life of Brian. This might be sort of a bit sensitive. Oh, don't like this. So then the studio dropped it, but then they had a contract. So then Monty Python sued them, and there's this whole thing. But then part of the settlement, the studio said you're not allowed to talk about this with anyone. This is like a secrecy clause in this. So the Monty Python went, okay, fine, whatever. We won't tell anybody that you didn't want to make our film. But then John Cleese pointed out there's no secrecy clause on the secrecy clause. So we
Hmm.
can tell people there's a secrecy clause. We just can't tell them what it is. So that's what they did. They just went around telling people, yeah, there was this studio, but we've got this secrecy clause with them. We can't tell you anything about it.
Classic.
But yeah, I thought the Blazing Saddles 2 was stopped because the main actor died, didn't he? I think. Or maybe that was just something else.
I don't know. I don't know exactly why it fell through, but you know, it never wound up happening anyway. Alan Alex is asking, have you heard of the indie animated series Interstellar Ranger commence from Brown Table on YouTube? No, that's not familiar to me. Have you heard of that one? I know Brown Table, just of the channel.
Interstellar Ranger. I I get the feeling that sounds like something. Mind you, it could have been an anime that I might have heard the name of. Brown Table is an interesting one because sometimes he says something like, you're like, okay, cool. And then like you see the stuff that EFAP covers, and you're like, what how did you come up with that?
Mm.
Like his whole Captain Marvel thing was just hilarious.
Yeah. I wonder if I'm going to scroll up a little, see if there are any other. Let's see. Well, anyway, actually, did you finish answering the question about what your favorite non-Godzilla kaiju stuff is? Because we kind of trailed off on the Mel Brooks stuff.
Oh right, yeah, I've
Or
got
was there
I
more?
sort of trailed. I started talking about building foundations.
Mhm.
Um, I'm trying to think what the non-kaiju stuff, because I do watch non-kaiju as much as I do talk about Godzilla, especially with the MonsterVerse. I do not consider myself to be an expert in any way, shape, or form. There's plenty of MonsterVerse monster stuff that I haven't watched. Although saying that, I have watched the original Gamera film. That's a trip. Um, yeah, non-monster
You
stuff.
meant you mentioned earlier reading manga like Berserk.
Yes, I did watch read an online version of Berserk. Um, and it's that and Attack on Titan are those two big name anime slash manga franchises which people rave about, but also I got about certain way through and went, okay, no. And with Berserk, because Berserk there was some really good stuff. I don't know if you've read it or seen it. I was gonna say see it, but apparently all the TV shows and films and they do of it only cover a very small portion of it, and never the stuff that's actually good. um, so in the manga, um, right after possibly one of the best parts of it, it started getting very silly and started getting very generic. Because
Hmm.
up to a point, Gat's Guts, because his name changes a lot, um, he turned into your bog basic big strong guy who saves the day character. Like there'll be a big fight going on with all the group of friends because at this point he has a group of friends, and oh no, they're starting to lose the fight. Maybe this big thing is coming. Here comes God with his big sword to save the day. You know, and that's so much different from the bit was probably the most. I'll explain it because it's kind of hard to like not describe it. He goes into a village where children are being kidnapped by fairies. And in this universe, when people get turned into monsters, when you kill the monster, they turn back into the people that they were before. So when he's going into the woods to find these fairies, the fairies attack him, so he kills them because they're demonic creatures. And then he walks off. And then there's like these giant bug monsters come on. He kills those. He walks, keeps on going, then finds the mother fairy moth creature, which is like Mothra mixed with Batra, weird monster creature.
Hmm.
Fights that, kills it, but he's grievously injured because oh my god, it's a massive fight. Oh, he's struggling. And as he's doing that, a group of soldiers have come to the village to say, "We're here to like go and get the children. Which way do we go?" It's like, well, the guy with the giant sword just walked that way. You probably follow him. And then as the soldiers are walking through the woods, and oh my god, all these dead children are everywhere because the fairies Guts has been killing were actually transformed children. So
Hmm.
he's been killing the fairies, and then after he's walked off, they turned into children. So these soldiers are just finding dead children everywhere. And then as they walk on, the giant bugs he was fighting are actually two or three knights that were converted by the fairy monster. He's like, oh my god, these are knights that we know about. He killed them as well. And when they finally catch up to Guts, they're like, "You're a horrible monster yourself. We're gonna kill you." He's like, "No, wait, hold on a minute. No, this is what. Oh god damn it!" And that's what the Berserk used to be like. Used to be again. It probably says a lot about why I like the MonsterVerse is the complications, the intricacies, the people having to struggle against each other and like work things out. It's just like that's really interesting and keeps me interested in it. So when you go from that to Guts is now just a superhero character with a bunch of friends that follow him around, like so many IPs nowadays, it's like, where's the interest? I completely lost interest in this.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see how like that feels like it would be the sort of old school dark pulp fantasy that like you'd expect from Conan or something. Yeah, it's that does sound like it would be intriguing to read. I really should read Berserk. I do follow this one power metal band, Beast in Black, and the guitarist was formerly with Battle Beast. They do a lot of songs about Berserk, so I'm familiar with it. Um, yeah, because their guitarist is apparently a huge nerd, but yeah, I
I
haven't
do hear
actually.
a lot about that.
Hmm?
I do see a lot of that nowadays. A lot of like metal bands,
Hmm.
um, and you see a lot of the stuff they talk about. It's like, oh, that's a fantasy thing. Oh, that's something to do with Dungeons and Dragons, or
Mm-hmm.
like Metallica doing a song about Cthulhu and stuff like this. It's like that's interesting.
Yeah,
Dragon Force is the one I think I've heard the name of. Unfortunately, not like the most positive manners, but yeah,
yeah. Dragon Force's reputation has gone up and down because when they first started out, like they didn't sound like any other band at up to that point because of how fast their two guitarists could play, how fast all their music was. But then they did a couple of live shows where they got drunk beforehand, which negatively affected their performance. So, uh,
that's why I
yeah.
heard. A friend who I met through Warcraft of all things. Um, she was just a vague description, a short 30 double D girl who decided to go to this Dragon Force concert wearing a corset and not much else. She was pushed to the front of the crowd because of that, and then she's like, "Oh, great! I'm going to see Dragon Force like right up close." And then they were absolutely terrible because they were drunk off their asses. But because she was her, they went, "Oh, do you want to come backstage and meet them?" And, oh yeah, sure. So she went backstage to meet them, and they were completely drunk off their asses. And then
Mm,
they're like, and they saw her and went, "Hey, do you want to come back to our hotel room?" And she was like, "No."
mm.
So you were terrible. I'm not going back.
Yeah. I do think they've cleaned up a little since then because they're still going. So they must have gotten something that I did hear I don't know if they completely sobered up, but they're at least not to the stage they were. And they also have a completely new singer, new bassist, new drummer. I think the two guitarists are the only ones who are still left actually from the original lineup. But but yeah, that I think they were my introduction to power metal as well, but then I wound up learning about all these other bands and after a while some of them do kind of blend together cuz like oh, everybody's writing about D&D in this genre, but then you get some stuff like, oh, hey, this one's about Catholic werewolves. Oh, that's interesting. These guys are riding giant dinosaurs and so there is some variety. Yeah, there's excuse me. But yeah, the so but it's interesting how nerdy that genre has become. Like metal used to be about bikers and whatnot, although not actually no. Metal's always been kind of genre driven because Black Sabbath, they were writing about horror movies way back. So I
I
guess
get that a
I
lot of
guess
genres. There was oh god, what was the band name? There was a band from Canvey, which is an island, a reclaimed island near me.
mhm.
Um, and the guitarist from that actually turned up in Game of Thrones as the guy who had his tongue cut out,
Hmm.
the executioner. He turned up in that because he thought he was dying from cancer, but then turns out he wasn't. I can't remember the name of the band, but one of the things that he pointed out about his band and potentially why it became so popular is because at the time they were making their songs about very mundane things.
Hmm.
You had people like Bowie at the top talking about going to space and doing whatnot. So he said that that was the impetus. One of the impetuses for their music was there's all this really weird, like off your head poppy stuff going on at the time. We don't want to do that. We want to be more grounded, which then gave people just something different to listen to in that regard.
Hmm.
And that kind of feels like you're saying about a lot of people are doing D&D stuff and whatnot. It's it's almost like as nerd culture has got bigger, like with computer games getting more popular and stuff like Marvel has like taken off and made comics more cool. As nerd culture has progressed, so people have thought, oh, they've either got people who hadn't talked about their nerd stuff before now feeling more comfortable about it, or you've got people saying we should try and take advantage of this. Let's make some of our own stuff, which is now probably why there's such a flood of content now.
Hmm. Yep. Although well, I guess that's always been the case though. Like back in the 40s, 50s, there were so many westerns. Everybody was doing them, because
Oh
they were
god,
easy
yes.
to make, and kept everybody was out in California. That's the West. All you need is a camera, a horse, and a hat, and you can basically just find any random ghost town and set up. But I guess it just comes and goes. Whatever is popular at the time and whatever will get more attention. But there's always going to be that stuff throughout that's a little bit different, that either it'll maintain this great cult following and get popular later, or enough people notice it that it becomes the new big thing and people start imitating that and the cycle continues. Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally understand that one. I'm trying to think of a recent example of like a new big thing kicking off.
I mean,
Because
everything's
one that
hero dominated. um,
I mean,
what?
yes, the flipping Marvel took over absolutely everything. And because you see that a lot with like, oh, Warcraft is actually the thing. Is a good example. World of Warcraft just became this massive juggernaut of a computer game, of a live service, which other computer games have tried to enforce. But the problem with that a lot of computer games trying to do the Warcraft thing or just the live service thing is that every single person will go, oh, let's try out this new game. I've got to pay monthly. I'm already paying monthly with Warcraft. Maybe try this for a month, and then only I've got stuff to do in Azeroth,
Yeah.
and that would essentially be. And that's the same with a lot of not IPs. It's like, well, we could go and see this other film that has superheroes in it. It talks about superhero films or what. But there's the Marvel films coming out, and we've only got so much time and money to spend. So let's go with the Marvel films and maybe watch those ones when they come out on DVD or something.
Hmm.
Which is probably why like film like Samaritan. Actually, no, Samaritan never got a theatrical release. Samaritan is like a really good superhero film, and nobody talks about it because it was just released straight to Amazon.
Yeah, but it probably wasn't Marvel enough.
No, it definitely wasn't Marvel off. It was very grounded. I
Hmm.
really liked it.
Wait, what's this one? Oh, the Warcraft movie was the worst thing to happen to video game adaptations since I can't think of a comparison, so I'll just say it sucks.
I'd have to watch that one again to really analyze it. I remember when it came out, I was sitting there going, "Oh, they missed that bit out. Oh, they missed a trick there, or they could have done that." And potentially in hindsight, I might be able to look at it and go, "Oh, well, they probably had to do that because of this and had to do that because of that."
Hmm.
But I do remember the film. It looks very good, and there's lots of little details in there. But again, they had to change so many details from the game that it will be hard. I don't remember it being like loved by fans of the game because of so many things were changed in it. And then you're trying to compare that with other films at the time. So yeah, probably probably have to watch it again in isolation, just it as a film, to see whether it stands up.
Hmm.
One of the
I
big things I remember they messed up a lot on was like the start of like the orcs becoming the green horrors that they are. That whole scene is very important to the history of just the games in general. So when they didn't include it, I was like, wow, okay, that's a thing. And then you got lots of other details they throw in at the beginning. You're like, well, that's not explained. They haven't explained that bit. That doesn't. They should probably said something about. Oh well, never mind.
hmm. There's a lot of Warcraft to cram in, though, right? So,
Yes, and unfortunately, thanks to Blizzard and Activision joining together, the lot of the stuff that they've added in now contradicts a lot of stuff from one of the funniest memes I saw back in the day when Warcraft was big and that culture was just everywhere. They talked about they had one panel of a comic where they discussed female druids. And they said, you can't have female druids. That's against the law. Druids are all male, and the women become priests. That's the law. And then someone said, well, we can make this little change just so as that women can be, women night elves can be druids in the game. It's like, well, if we allow that, who knows where the changes will go? And it's like, oh, it won't be that bad. And then the next panel, you had gnome death knights,
hmm,
um, space cow shamans, and holy cows
hmm.
because they allowed Taurans to be paladins. So people just went, haha, holy cows.
That had to be deliberate.
Almost certainly, but it's just like it's the example of when you start changing one little thing, you start opening the door to lots of other changes.
The
And
domino.
if you don't put a stopper on it, it will just keep changing until the law is just so different from what it started out as that it's no longer the same story. Which is why potentially the Warcraft film might get away with some of the changes it made, because if the games aren't willing to stick to their story, why not let the Warcraft film take some liberties?
Hmm. Then again, from
Which
what
is
I've
actually
heard, hmm?
oh, go on.
From what I've heard, Blizzard and Activision have bigger things to worry about than the lore of the games these days. But
Oh yeah, some of the recent stuff hasn't been
hmm,
great from what I've heard. I still remember the "Don't you guys have phones?"
hmm,
uh, comment. That's gonna live in everyone's memory, I think.
yeah. Thoughts on the Dragonheart prequels? I'm still I'm still kind of surprised they even made Dragonheart a franchise. Went with the first movie. Have you seen Dragonheart?
I saw the Sean Connery Lizard Boy. Yep.
Yeah,
And that's the only I saw that. I went, yeah, Sean Connery is a giant scaly. Yeah, that sounds great. And it was quite a fun film. Then I found out, I can't remember what it was. Someone went, did you know they've made a third sequel? And you're like, what? There's a there's prequels? That what?
mm, all kinds of them. I don't know. I mean, Dragonheart was kind of for me like similar to Highlander or Pacific Rim or something, where you're at the end of the story with the first one. So how it just feels weird to make more of it at that point.
Yeah, you get stuff like that, don't you? So you start off like the initial film is the end of it, but then people are like, but we want to see more of this character and this stuff. So then people start making prequels because you can't make a sequel to something where someone's died. So you start making,
Mm,
and that becomes an interesting prospect because then you've got to you're watching this film with the knowledge that the person can't die or have this significant change in these prequels because then they've got to get to the point where they are in the other one. It's an interesting. It can be done, but it's not generally done because of that very issue. Like weirdly, Furiosa, the film that's come out recently, it's like you can't really have any stakes in that film for Furiosa because she has to be in Mad Max Fury Road.
mhm.
So but I mean, people are saying it's a very good film, and it's like all actiony and adventure, all that sort of thing. But yeah, it does bring into question stakes.
Yep.
Mind you, lots of things do that. People talk about stakes, like if there's a magic system in a film or franchise of any kind. Okay, so what are the extents of the magic system? What can a magic system do? And it's like, well, why do you need to know about that? And it's like, well, because it affects the stakes. I mean, if someone has the ability to create a shield around themselves that can blocks all damage, if that is the thing, then that reduces a lot of potential threats. Is like, oh no, they don't have that. Okay, cool. And then you get to at some point, and then they pull that out, and you're like, wait, hold on a minute. I thought you said they didn't have that. Oh well, they do now, but that when they were in danger, what?
Yeah. Or like in Ultraman Rising. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but
I actually watched
there
that today.
yeah, I do ultimately like it, but I do feel like there are multiple times the way they set up Ultraman in this particular movie, without getting into spoilers, just in case, there are multiple times where I feel like the main character Ken Sato should have turned into Ultraman or done something with one of his powers that would have saved a lot of trouble that he didn't do because the plot needs to escalate. I like the movie. I wasn't sure about it at first. It was touch and go, but I I feel like maybe they could have either better defined what Ultraman's able to do at any given point in this universe, or else better thought through what when he's able to do things or why he doesn't do certain things at certain times. So,
Yeah,
which is the most recent example.
there's two bits that come to mind where you talk about that he should have done this thing. Is that I'm trying to think how to say it without actually saying it. I can't really, but yeah, there's there's a bit where he's chasing on a bike, and they go, "Oh, over there," and you're like, "Okay, so you're gonna turn into Ultraman now and go over?" No, you're gonna go on a bike, okay? And then later on, something happens. It's like, "Oh no, some things are." Oh, there's actually a third one I just thought of, and it wasn't to do with Ultraman himself. It was to do with the robot in the house. Something happens there, and you're like, "So why didn't you do that thing?" But
Hmm.
yeah, overall, I did like the film. It did have some emotional gut punch to it and whatnot. So I was like, "Oh, this is I quite like it." But there are little issues like that, and then there's one quite large issue which I took at the end. Which again, I can't say anything because it's the end. So but unfortunately, it does affect basically the entire plot.
Hmm. Yeah. It, Ultraman Rising is flawed. Not terrible, but very flawed. So,
Yeah, it's one of those films you're just like, I do enjoy it, I do like it, but
hmm. Yep. Focus on the emotional part. Don't focus on the logical plot part.
it's kind of like the Fallout show that came out recently. It's like I watched that through the first time. I really liked it. Episode 8 got me a bit, and there's one or two bits during the show, and I was like, oh well, they could have done that better. I watched it back, and I found some more issues with the show, but I was still enjoying it quite a lot. There was still a lot of there was a lot of heart in the show. There was a lot of effort to translate things from the games into the show, and there clearly a lot of personality and really good attempts. Like I say, attempts they did it to translate the very quirky sort of this is horrible, but this is also funny. This is going to be gory, but it's also going to be kind of like jokey. It's that sort of emotion of the games into the show was really well done. There are some quite glaring issues with it, including a complete massive misinterpretation of what cold fusion is. But yeah, it's like overall, it's like the show's got a lot of flaws, but it's also I really like it. There's something about it that just makes me go, yeah, this is a good show.
Yeah. Sometimes it just speaks to you in a way that makes you think, Well, it's imperfect, but I don't care.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of people think about that with Godzilla versus Kong.
Could be. I mean, some people I think do genuinely like it and might not see anything wrong with it at all. But it all depends. Sometimes, so, I mean, no piece of entertainment is ever going to be truly perfect, but it, I guess it all just sometimes the stuff that's flawed, it's just a question of, do those flaws really have that big an effect on your enjoyment? And I don't know. For me, I feel like I can overlook that stuff with something like Ultraman Rising or GXK or something like that. Because yeah, GXK, it does have stuff like that huge contrivance with the Beast Glove just happening to be there. But it's like, okay, so it's there. The And now I want to see what happens once he's actually got it.
That was what I think I said about it in my videos. Is that I went into this film going, well, I'm definitely not going to like this film. I know I'm going to do my best to just sit there and enjoy it and just watched it, but I'm bringing a notepad and pen with me. And that point in the film just completely broke me. The glove was just one aspect of it. I'll go through it now. I've gone through it in the video, but I'm going to go through it now for everybody listening. It's like when spoilers for Godzilla X Con if you haven't watched it. I don't know why you haven't if you're a kaiju fan. Uh, but Kon arrives at the Iwi village. Why do the Iwi open up for him when he's a giant ape and they don't like the giant apes? And nobody has told them. As far as I'm aware, I don't think anyone said to them about Kong or hasn't told everybody about Kong. So, okay, so why do these people, how do they know Kong's out there? Because you can't see through the thing. So, have they got people outside like reporting to them? At which point, do those people know? Oh, that whole thing, just that one instance of the Iwi open up for Kong, that has so many questions around it, and we're never going to get answers for it. Then you've got the fact that Kong arrives at the Iwi village. How does he arrive at the Iwi village? Oh, apparently Jaya, he has a connection or something with Jaya that allows him to locate her whenever he's. I'm sorry, when did that happen? Did Jaya have a psychic connection with him? That wasn't established. When was that? Just again, that's just a thing that just happens in the film. Um, he gets to the Iwi village from where he had all his traps set up. That was God knows how far away, and how and the Iwi village was just again the distance he had to travel. The distance he had to travel from the Scar King's base to his trap where all his traps were, which includes scaling that like miles high, sheer faced crystal cliff which was in that cave. Whilst injured with frostbite, which he had to be supported by Diddy Kong to get to the Iwi village. So just that one instance, that on its own has just got so many problems with it. Then when he gets there, they pull out a tricorder. Yeah, when did you have this? When did you go to Star Trek and get the tricorder? And then that's when they use it to analyze Con. Then they bring in the Power Glove, the Nintendo Power Glove, and it just so happens to be the correct. I say it's the right hand, but it's the correct limb that needs fixing that they have built. So they could have built any part of the suit at any time, but they built the right arm, which was the exact limb which Connor's injured. And it just so happens to be in the base down in the Hollow Earth, the one near where Kong is. It just so happens to have not been destroyed by the giant apes when they destroyed the base. And it just so happens to have some kind of medicine in it, some generic, non-specific medicine which cures his frostbite or relieves it. They just so happen to have the right medicine for frostbite in the Hollow Earth. When and all of that happens just before Mothra is just like into existence, and you're like, I just sat there and saw all that happen, and I just threw my pen on the floor and went, no, I'm done. I'm just going to sit here and just watch the colors on the screen for the next God knows how long. which is in my reviews of Godzilla X Kong. Everything after that is just sort of like this. I think this thing happened. Possibly, you guys tell me because I don't really remember. I lost consciousness around that point. But yeah, it's just like that one moment in the film. So much happens which doesn't make any sense and causes so many issues. It broke me. It completely broke me.
Hmm. Well, I personally, I just thought, okay, it's contrived, but let's just see where it goes from here. I would come up with something more, but we've got a lot of other stuff to get through. Actually, there's a question for both of us from the guy whose logo you really like. What do you think of the concept of reviving the Showa era version of Godzilla and creating a live action TV show of him and his adventures? Would it work in your opinion? You go first.
Hmm. Showa era God.
I'm guessing he means
Again,
like
that's an
delayed.
yeah. I was going to say again, as we discussed earlier, the Showa era Godzilla had a progression from dark, nasty man to like cheerful hero man. So saying the Showa era Godzilla is kind of a non-specific where would you start type thing. But
Hmm.
if you have the concept in your head of the more heroic Godzilla,
You did
um,
specify
oh,
70.
70s Godzilla. So yeah, um, so yeah, that could. Hmm. A lot of those films required Godzilla to be fight like the Godzilla versus Gargan Godzilla versus Megalon Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. Is a lot of them were Godzilla versus Hedorah. It was all Godzilla versus another monster. So it would be like a like the Gamera Rebirth series. Just like every episode, he's fighting a monster. That would be sort of like what a Showa era Godzilla would be, just like a monster of the week type thing. So it's kind of like an Ultraman type series then, in which but Godzilla instead of Ultraman.
Or maybe the
Um,
Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
I never saw that. Oh no, what we're talking about? Of course I have. Yeah, yeah, like that really. That would be kind of. Do you know what was kind of funny about that? Is like when the Orca was being used in King of the Monsters. Is like they have a device in the Hanna Barbera cartoon
Yeah.
where they just like press a button and summon Godzilla. Is like it's like you could basically turn the Orca into that, which would actually be a really interesting plot point in if you rewrote Godzilla versus Kong, you could have that be a really interesting plot point where instead of like parts of Mechagodzilla drawing Godzilla in, it's Apex using their own versions of an Orca device to lure Godzilla to their bases.
Hmm.
And then
I,
that's how they work out something's gone wrong is like Bernie or someone finds the device and goes, hang on a minute, this is an Orca. What are they doing with this?
eh, that, I think I actually did like a speculative video that was kind of like that. That kind of assumed the Orca was going to be present. So it, yeah, that could have been an interesting alternate version. And yeah, I that would be my thought as well. Sort of like somewhere between Gamera Rebirth and Hanna Barbera Godzilla. Although actually, Godzilla's currently at Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers also owns all the Hanna Barbera stuff. Feels like there's an
Oh, good
opportunity
lord!
there. They
Especially now that they changed him into the sort of the Pink Zilla. Hey, look, he's kind of like the Millennium series Godzilla. Hey, we want to make him more like he was in the past. Which again, they don't really know what they're talking about. When they say that, but their intention to make Godzilla more like the vision of Godzilla they had from when they were children, which would probably be more like the Showa era Godzilla. He is in the perfect position to do a Hanna Barbera Showa era esque like TV show where he beats up other monsters.
Yeah, why wouldn't they do that? Where's his Scooby Doo crossover, Warner? Come on, Scooby Doo
At this
everyone
point,
else.
probably budget. Could you
Yeah.
imagine Godzilla every episode?
Hmm.
saying that, they have like Disney TV shows where they have like $200 million a series, and you're like, yeah, just put that into a Godzilla TV series. Go for it.
Yeah. The, there are apparently going to be other shows on Apple Plus. O'Shea Jackson tweeted recently, like a month or two ago, that he had just had a kaiju meeting and he didn't say anything else. And he was one of the guys who was like, what was the show that everyone said he was pitching? Project G Team or something?
Oh, G Team, G Force, something like that.
And there were like concept art, or at least some kind of art of what Gigan might look like. So who knows? They are ordering more. Maybe.
Apple is a very interesting platform. Obviously, I bought it for Monarch LOM, but when I obviously waiting for the next episode to come out, let's have a look at see what's else is on here. They have so many random, like completely unheard of, like films and TV shows on there with some really big actors in. Like there's one about like post-apocalyptic TV show where everyone's blind except for the kids of this one character, and it's all just about what would the future be like if the human race couldn't see, and it stars Jason Momoa. You know,
Oh,
when was this?
that one. I kept seeing the ads for that one. Yeah, I've almost forgotten about that.
And then there was a film about uh it was a real life thing. It was like two black, well, they're not bankers. I think one was a property owner, the other one just had loads of money, and they wanted to own a bank, but they couldn't do it because they were black people in whatever year it was. So they just got some white guy and trained him up to pretend to be them. And it's like this is okay. So who's in this film? Well, you got the guy who plays Falcon from the Marvel films. You got Samuel Jackson, and then the guy who plays Beast from the X-Men films. You're like, I'm sorry, what? You got
which
all these
piece?
big names, accents, random stuff.
You're talking about Kelsey Grammer, or like the more recent, the
The
prequel?
more recent one.
Oh, okay. Then there's also that retro one about the salesman selling property on the moon, and it's retro sci-fi. There are some big
Oh
names
yeah,
in that.
I saw that was on there as well. And that had a load of people, and it's just, how Apple are just spending money on big actors in random stuff. Like, put that money into a Godzilla TV show where he fights monsters every week. Just do that, Apple. You'll make millions.
Exactly. We'll see. I mean, I think that, love it or hate it, the success of the new empire is going to be a bit more encouraging towards stuff like that. So we will see. Could be. I don't know.
You'd like to think with the Godzilla -1 attention that people are getting, and then the counters to that people are making with, oh well, Godzilla can be silly as well. Make silly Godzilla stuff as well. Some people do like the Rock'em Sock'em robot bits. Is like if you get that sort of the two-facedness of Godzilla, then potentially people might look into doing stuff like a Showa era TV show.
hmm.
That could be the way to go. You never know. People might actually get into that, and then you could have the serious stuff and the silly stuff coinciding.
Yeah. And I also think there's a possibility of being able to strike a balance between the serious and the silly. Like, getting back to Showa Godzilla, those earlier movies from the 60s, King Kong versus Godzilla, of course, is like a full-on satire, but the other stuff, sure, they have their ridiculous moments, but they've also got some pretty interesting intrigue as well. Because, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, spy movie. There's an island adventure with Godzilla versus the Sea Monster and Son of Godzilla. Alien invasions with Monster Zero. The and those were like I said, they had their odd moments, but they weren't going full cartoon like the 70s movies wound up doing. So I do think there's a balance to be struck. We'll just see if they do strike it. King of the Monsters certainly struck it, if you ask me.
Oh yes, but I say then like the Fallout TV show has its dark and its humor all mixed in together, and it works really well. Same about Son of Godzilla. It's just that there's plenty of funny parts in that. Like, I think he's going to cook something. He's like, "Oh, what the hell is this?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm drying my salad in there." And they went, "That's where we put our clothes." And he's like, "Oh." And then someone comes over, "Oh, hey, salad." Nom 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 nom. That's just a funny part in the film. But then later on, um, I think it's the same actor who ends up being blown up by Godzilla in Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. He comes running out of one of the buildings and he's just like shooting at people and they're like, oh my god, what's going on? He's like, oh, he's going stir crazy with the heat, and you just see him like running off, going, huh? He's like, oh, that's quite a disturbing little bit they've got
Yeah.
there, and it's all mixed in because yeah, a good film can have humor and
Hmm.
like quite disturbing bits if it's made well.
Even the early Marvel movies did that. Iron Man, a lot of people talk about how funny it is, but man, the guy spends a good chunk of the movie kidnapped by terrorists that will kill him. So you got you got the dark elements and the funny elements there. Guardians of the Galaxy certainly doesn't get enough credit for its more serious moments because everyone focuses on, oh, the pop music is actually part of the story, and wasn't this line shocking and dirty but also funny? But there's some real heart behind there too. So the balance can exist. We have seen it happen across multiple things. So the future is uncertain, but then again, we do have a new director coming in for the next movie. What are your thoughts on that? About the guy who directed I Am Mother directing the next MonsterVerse film, whatever that winds up being.
I have my hopes because I watched I Am Mother. Um, Unfortunately, I did have to actually look up which one that was because there's so many films with the word mother in it. So is that the one where it's like the allegory for the Bible, or is that the other one for? No, this is Mother. I Am Mother, and it brings me hope because that has some interesting commonalities with King of the Monsters. In that, with King of the Monsters, you see a lot of like people noticed right at the beginning that beginning scene with Madison and Emma when you're watching the first time has one connotation. Then when you've watched the film, you watch the film again. That scene now has completely different connotations because of what you now know, which
Hmm.
makes it a very good piece of writing, which people just seem to ignore. Um, I Am Mother. Spoilers for I Am Mother. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it. But you watch it through once, and it's got one narrative. You watch it through again, and there's another narrative going on, which completely changes like the connotations of everything that's in the film, including other characters who turn up. It's just like that's a really good bit of writing to have both narratives running consecutively, and it just entirely depends on how you look at a film that you get the different narrative. That gives me hope that if someone is able to make a film like that, that they will be able to bring something like that into the monsterverse, or back into the monsterverse, I should say. And it wouldn't be too hard. Too many people will say, "Oh, well, Godzilla X Con has gone super silly now, so there's no way of turning back from that." No, there's plenty of opportunity to come back from that.
Hmm.
Absolutely plenty. One of the ones I pitched in, I think it was Zimzilla's stream. Was it Zimzilla's? I can't remember now. Um, the idea, because with previous MonsterVerse films, when the monsters turn up, there's a lot of preparation because they're giant monsters going through the sea or whatnot. They take a long time to get anywhere, so people have time to evacuate cities. Godzilla versus Kong didn't do that very well, but they normally have plenty of times for people to evacuate cities. But in Godzilla X Con, they just turned up through a portal at Rio. They had no time to evacuate, so that there would have been a lot of casualties there. You can easily imagine the next film being a Captain America Civil War type situation where you have the UN talking to Monarch about we need to do something here because it's getting worse and worse. It's just escalating. Need to do something about it, and just making it a lot more. serious and politically involved like that. And then you can easily then lead into cities being armed with like mini oxygen destroyer weapons, and then
Mm.
leading to the creation of that. I have a really good idea for the accidental creation of a zombie titan.
Hmm.
Like someone uses an oxygen destroyer on it, kills it, and then it comes back to life with like an oxygen like destroyer infestation in it. I really like that idea because then you can have like Godzilla fighting a zombie titan, and maybe other titans getting involved because this is a complete and utter abomination of like nature. And
Yeah.
it's like that is just something I came off the cuff with. It's like if surely a competent writer with years to think about it could come up with something better. It's like cross your fingers and hope, really, at this point.
Only time will tell at this point. Nothing's set in stone at the moment. But I like to think that they brought him on for a reason. And considering I Am Mother is, I think, his only major movie at this point, if not his only movie, period. I think I like to think that they brought him on because of that, and they're like, this guy can bring the movie in an interesting direction. Who knows if it would have gone in a similar direction with Wingard on board or not? Because he was talking about trying to go a bit more serious anyway. But like maybe they're thinking he actually can bring us there for certain. So there's the hope. Like you said, I have some hope as well.
Well, a lot of the MonsterVerse films have been done by people who've only had like one big success beforehand. Like Gareth Edwards had his one big success, and then he
Hmm.
went straight into Godzilla 2014, which arguably reignited the passion a lot of fans had for the Godzilla franchise and kaiju as a
Indeed.
whole. So it can be done.
Yeah. And as far as like not having much to the filmography, every director was a first time director at some point. When Steven Spielberg directed Jaws, he had like two movies that not many people really knew about. And even today, they tend to get overlooked. What was it? Amblin and Duel, I think. But then everyone says, then he made Jaws and basically invented the blockbuster. So I would think that in at least in that regard, that should be a good example of how just because you're just starting out doesn't mean there should be automatic skepticism. Obviously, we don't know how he's going to do, but everybody has to start somewhere. And you know, I think a lot of people would love for their first directing job to be something like a Godzilla movie or a Star Wars movie or something that they were big fans of. So why not this too?
I mean, yeah, there are obviously examples of the opposite where you get like Star Wars, like Disney Plus will hire someone for a Star Wars franchise. You know, oh, what have they done before? Like, and it's like a bit part writing, co-author of something completely random and really small, and then people will use that as an example of, oh, this is going to be terrible. When it's like, but then you have the MonsterVerse, which is really good, and then you realize, oh no, wait, these people think the MonsterVerse is bad as a hop flipping little platoon. That complete idiot.
Mm.
This is I know you said try and keep the swearing down, but flip me over. that, that guy can, yeah.
Yeah, that some takes. I mean, influencer boxing match between you two when? Hmm. I mean, we'd have to figure out the time zone stuff. I'm personally thinking with some of those hand puppets that have the punching arms that reach out.
It just yeah, I'll set up the camera to have on my side. You have the camera on your
There
side,
you
and
go.
we'll just be like, yeah, boof. Oh, we could do it like written style. I'll write a move, and then you have to like write a bit next bit, and write, and then we'll see who ends up winning. Yeah.
Yep. All right, we'll have to figure that out. How long have we been going at this point? Oh my, almost 2.5 hours. This has been a long and very interesting one.
I do apologize.
Oh no, I did say interesting. It's not like we've been sitting here and I've been thinking, oh, when is this going to end? No, this has been great. for a first conversation where we had no idea what was going to happen, I mean, yeah, I think this has gone really well.
I think it's safe to say we've got plenty of stuff to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't even touched on our different opinions of Godzilla versus Kong, for instance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We could always,
We, hmm?
I say, we could always save that for another stream.
Perhaps. I mean, it is probably getting late over there, isn't it?
What time is it? It is 20 past the midnight.
Oh, my. Yeah, we probably should wrap things up. I feel like this would be a natural point to do so, unless there's anything else you wanted to discuss.
Nothing that comes, but there is one thing I wanted to make. I remembered it when we were talking about critical drinkers' opinions of
Oh, yeah.
certain giant apes. Um, when that came about, and I made, oh no, was it about that? No, or was it somebody else? Made a video about Kong being racist, and then I made a video talking about it, and then in the comments you said, "Yeah, I've already done that," or was it Twitter, whichever one it was? You said, "I've already made a video on it. Here's the link to it." Um,
Wasn't it
I
sarcastic
was kind.
who did that?
Yes, that
Like,
was it.
yeah,
Sarcastic, overly sarcastic productions.
yeah, overly sarcastic production.
Um, you put the link to the video you made a couple years ago now, when you
Mm-hmm.
talked about the not racist connotations of Kong.
Mm-hmm.
Just to finish this stream off with something I found quite funny. You sound it's I'm guessing it's just the years of doing videos and you've sort of learned to have a certain like tone and vernacular to your voice. I clicked on that link and it sounded like you were on helium. It was really funny. It's like you got your videos now. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni viewer, and today we're going to discuss this point. And then I clicked on that link and went, "Hi, everybody! It's the Omni viewer." So I was like, "Oh my god, what happened?"
Those were in the days before I got the lapel mic, and I had to project a little in order to be heard.
Oh, okay.
And then let's see. Just to close things off too, thank you both Omniviewer and C Animus for your feedback on the concept of my question, and I agree it would be better for there to be a balance between the serious stuff and the campy, cheesy goo.
Or it can easily be done. You could have the serious films where they have like the bigger. It's something that people have always wanted with the Marvel stuff. Is that you have the films have the big issues, the big storylines, the world-ending threats and stuff like that going
Mhm.
on, and then a TV show that just explores other things. But they never do it. They always have a TV show that has a world-ending threat, or a TV show that has a world-ending threat, or a TV show that has a world-ending threat. So you could, with the MonsterVerse, you could easily have had a King of the Monsters film, and then a show where Godzilla fights Monster of the Week, like a Titan who like wants to eat a power plant, and Godzilla sort of has to knock him down, or a Titan that's causing trouble, but then, oh no, where is Godzilla? He's not helping, and then they have to figure out why the Titan's doing its thing and what's causing it, and then solve that problem. You can put forward a lot of interesting plot lines, like I don't know, zombie Titan caused by oxygen destroyer weapons. That could be just a little storyline they put into a TV show, and they'll just knock those out. It'd be like, yeah, that could be the campier, funny, fun side to the MonsterVerse, next to the more serious, darker tones of the films. It could be easily done. It's just someone has to do it.
Oh, legendary. Give both of us a call. We'll brainstorm.
I'm cheap.
Hmm?
It's not just shouting out to any potential like producers. I'm cheap. I don't cost much.
Yeah. But on that note, I guess if there's anything you want to say to wrap things up, other than commenting on the changing of my voice, feel free to.
Everybody go watch Omniviewer's content if you're not already. It's very good. It's very informative, and there's usually stuff that he will talk about that you just not you. either don't necessarily know about or you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. Just like it's a lot more thought going on there than the average viewer, hence why he's probably called the Omni viewer.
And on a similar note, if you're not watching C Animus's stuff, you really should do that as well. He also has a great ability to go into really finer details about how different things either work or don't work. And even if I don't always necessarily agree with what he says, I do still think it's fascinating. And well, we've kind of been playing off each other indirectly for a little bit now, and we'll probably still be doing so in the days to come.
Yes, different opinions are always welcome. There was actually one of the, I think it was the Sea Monster stream, where I talked about how 2014 and Kingdom Monsters, there's some there might be some scaling issues going on, but you generally don't notice because the monsters are just big anyway. So when they're bigger, you don't really notice it. But in Godzilla vs. Kong and GXK, there's more consistent scaling. But because the scaling usually coincides with the monsters looking very small, like just their environments are just massive compared to them. The uh, yeah, I didn't like it because it just made my titans look very small. And someone said to me, "So your issue is that the scaling is more consistent? Like my problem is that the more consistent scaling?" And I just sat there and went, "Yes." it's yeah, it kind of is that they're more consistent with the scaling, which causes issues because of what they're scaling with. It was just, it threw me completely, and it's one of those things that I appreciate about different opinions is that you can think one thing, but all it takes is for someone to go, "So this?" And you go, "Oh yeah, actually yeah."
There you go. I think I can't think of a better note to end on. Although we did get this question: can we get a kiss goodbye before you go? Well,
Mwah.
eh, well, there's one. Mine will be
No
saying
tons.
you're gonna lose your mind in Detroit Rock City. Kiss, you
Fair
know.
enough.
So
Oh right, okay. Sorry, I'm not a
yeah,
Kiss fan. I've not listened to much of their stuff.
they're not the most intricate band, but I do think they're popular for a reason. But I spoke about that elsewhere. Anyway, I guess we can sign off. However you wish to sign off, go right ahead.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been a very enlightening, very enjoyable conversation we've had. And to everybody watching, last but not least, thank you for watching.
Yes, thank you all for watching. Until such time as we meet again, this is both the Omni Viewer and C Animus signing off.